In studying Buddhism, we spent a fair amount of time on the life of the Buddha because the Buddha's story, and later additions to his story, feature so prominently in Buddhist art. Mohammed is just as important to Islam, but his story appears much less frequently in art. There's a simple but important reason for this. Islam forbids the depiction of zoomorphic images, that is, images of humans and animals in religious art. So for the most part, Muhammad is not depicted in Islamic art. On the right, you see a description of Muhammad. The work contains exquisite calligraphy or ornamental writing, but no image. On the left is an unusual Ottoman Turk painting of Muhammad, but notice that his face is blank and even his hands are covered by his sleeves. Nevertheless, the life story of Muhammad, the practices that Muhammad established, even, as we'll see, the structure of his house in Medina are vitally important to Islam and to Islamic art and architecture. So let's begin with a video introduction to the life of Muhammad. We're going to continue with Muhammad's story, but first I want to switch videos and look at the way in which Muhammad's house in Medina helped shape the future plan of all mosques. And now let's resume our history of the life of Muhammad and the founding of Islam. Note that from the very beginning, Islam was associated with wars of conquest, and that in Islamic regimes, political and religious rule were intertwined. Pay special attention to the central role played by the Kaaba, the holy house in Mecca that is the epicenter of the Hajj, or pilgrimage to Mecca. This is a 13th century Persian painting of Muhammad's great victory over Mecca. As we'll see, the Persians were much less reluctant to paint human and animal images. The Kaaba is the central shrine of Islam, a place that all pious Muslims are called upon to visit once in their lifetime. I'm going to talk more about the Kaaba in a minute, but to really understand its role in Islam, first we need to understand its context. Yes, you need to know these 5 pillars. Even more, you need to understand how the mosque is designed to help Muslims meet these 5 religious obligations. So let's watch another video clip. You've already seen the first required images of the Kaaba. Here are the other 2. Given these 3 images, what do you think is most important to understanding this work? Well, I would say its function, the ritual associated with the Kaaba. In this required image, you see throngs of Muslims circumambulating the work. Remember the Great Stupa? But Muslims, as the video explained, walk in a counterclockwise circle, a deliberate gesture to indicate that this is not nature worship, that Allah is in fact beyond time and place. The Kaaba originally contained 360 idols that probably represented the days of the year. But by Muhammad's day, the Kaaba was venerated as the shrine of Allah, the high God. Once a year, tribes from all around the Arabian Peninsula, whether Christian or pagan, would converge on Mecca to perform the Hajj. Muhammad both built on and transformed this tradition. After Muhammad's victory, his tribe rebuilt the Kaaba with alternating courses of stone and wood. The inner space was divided into 2 rooms, one of which housed the black stone. The exterior is covered by a black silk cloth decorated with gold-embroidered calligraphy. This cloth is known as the kiswa, and it is replaced yearly. Inside the Kaaba, in its eastern corner, is the black stone. This stone, venerated in pre-Islamic times, is now the focal point of the Kaaba. The Quran teaches that God instructed Abraham, together with his son Ishmael, to raise the foundations of the holy house on this site. After Abraham had built the Kaaba, an angel brought to him the black stone, a celestial stone that, according to tradition, had fallen from heaven onto a nearby hill. The black stone is believed by Muslims to be the only remnant of the original structure made by Abraham. Abraham then received a revelation in which Allah told him to go and proclaim the pilgrimage to the Kaaba to mankind. And this is the origin of the Hajj, one of the 5 pillars of Islam. According to Islamic tradition, the black stone was set intact into the Kaaba's wall by Muhammad. Since then, it has been broken into a number of fragments and is now cemented into a silver frame in the side of the Kaaba. My next lecture will focus on mosques, but now that we've reviewed the 5 pillars of Islam, I want to stop and make the very important point that to understand a mosque, any mosque, we must see it as a building dedicated to these central elements of Islam. The mosque is a place of testimony. The word is proclaimed at the minbar or stepped pulpit. Worshippers are called to prayer from the minaret. Prayer is conducted in the prayer hall, in this case represented by the area below a central dome, but in many older mosques, it's a hypostyle hall with pillars. The mihrab, built into the Qibla wall, shows the way to Mecca and the direction in which to pray. Ritual cleansing and community interchange take place in the courtyard. Since there are 4 mosques among your required works, we will look at 4 distinct mosque plans, but for now, let's continue with our introduction to Islamic history. Islam spread with extraordinary speed. By the time of his death in 632, Muhammad's armies had conquered Arabia. The areas in light blue were conquered under the first 4 caliphs, and the Umayyad caliphs, from their new capital in Damascus, went on to conquer the areas in green in less than 100 more years. So let's pick up the story with the spread of Islam and the establishment of a new Umayyad capital at Damascus. I'm skipping over a lot of complicated religious history as different groups of Muslims fought for leadership of the new religion. Sorry. The mosque at Damascus is not a required work, but it is the first major mosque and would set a pattern for most early mosques. So here is the mosque plan. Note that while the prayer hall has hypostyle columns, there is considerable open space for worshippers. I'm sorry that the otherwise excellent Islamic art video does not discuss the Dome of the Rock. You're stuck with me. The Dome of the Rock is located on a rocky outcrop known as Mount Moriah, where, according to Jewish and Muslim beliefs, Abraham offered his son Isaac as a sacrifice. The inscriptions inside the building glorify Islam as the final true revelation and as the culmination of the faiths of Judaism and Christianity. The building is not a mosque. Rather, it is a shrine erected over a sacred site. There is a very important mosque nearby as part of the same complex. The Dome of the Rock is located at the visual center of a platform known as the Temple Mount. It was constructed on the site of the Second Jewish Temple, which was destroyed during the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70 CE. Muslims also believe that this is the place where Muhammad ascended to heaven one night, accompanied by the angel Gabriel. I've said that the Dome of the Rock is a shrine, not a mosque, and in no small part, it is a shrine to the military and spiritual triumph of Islam over Byzantine Christianity. The design of the shrine was greatly influenced by the Christian churches constructed during the Byzantine era. Like many Byzantine churches, the Dome of the Rock is octagonal in shape. It is also represented the first time a dome was constructed on top of an Islamic religious building. The dome was clearly designed to compete with the nearby Byzantine Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So for all its religious significance, in some ways, this is a victory monument, like Trajan's Column. This aerial view makes it easier to see the Dome of the Rock's octagonal construction. I thought the reading did a good job of explaining the design of this monument, but didn't really delve into the Temple Mount's complicated history as a site holy to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. In the foreground here, you see the Wailing Wall, the last remnant of the destroyed Jewish temple. So this video gives some sense of the conflict that has arisen over this structure. These photos of the Dome of the Rock exterior capture some of the rich tile ornamentation that is typical of Islamic art. Green, by the way, is the traditional color associated with Islam. As you've learned, it has a strong association with paradise. But blue in the Middle Eastern tradition is the color of protection, and vivid blues characterize many Islamic decorative tiles. Note, too, the great importance associated with the words of the Quran. Calligraphy or decorative writing is one of the most characteristic features of Islamic art. The words portrayed on the tile are usually from the Quran, but sometimes they come from other sacred texts. And again, since the Quran forbids images, Islamic artists channeled their creativity into geometric and floral designs. I love these tiles. You should know the term aniconic, by the way. It sometimes shows up in AP questions. Here we see some of the splendid interior mosaic decorations. These mosaics were created by Christian artists from Byzantium. But when we get to Byzantine art, you will see that the absence of human and animal figures represents an important departure from the Byzantine mosaic tradition. The mosaics include images of crowns, jewels, and chalices, all emblems of royal power, emphasizing Islam's conquest of land once ruled by Byzantine and Persian emperors. You'll recognize the domed octagon when we study the Byzantine church of San Vitale in Ravenna, Italy. The Muslims borrowed freely from Byzantine Christian art, just as the Byzantine Christians borrowed freely from Rome. The dome was especially appropriate for mosques or other holy places because it provided a large open space for communal prayer, while the soaring roof lines turned thoughts of believers toward heaven. Okay, we've covered a lot of material, and I hope given you a sense of Islam and its rich artistic tradition. In my next lecture, I will explore the 4 great mosques that feature on the College Board's list of required images.